Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today, we're talking about an update for the Subnautica 2 lawsuit update that is both against the three key studio heads that were working there, and also with Krafton. So I want to definitely talk about this, and yeah, this is going to be long and drawn out, so just bear with me some, okay? Because it is really important that we get to what is happening and what is being misunderstood here. Because I've already gone over this for quite a while, really a couple of hours. And yes, I'm not a lawyer. Okay, we can all agree with that. I'm just stating that for the video. Okay, so in a surprising turn that U-turn, Krafton significantly has changed their argument on basically why they terminated the three at the studio. The three main guys. During the discovery phase, the founders basically sought discovery to see if Krafton held evidence to back up the claim of basically why they were terminated. But despite the obvious... Essentially, Krafton said that documents related to the readiness of the game were irrelevant to the termination, which is what this phase of discovery is focused on, despite this being the reason cited in the termination notices. Now, I have tried finding those termination notices, anything whatsoever, even just paraphrases. I can't find anything. I wish I could. And also, the reason being cited in the termination notices was also repeatedly public and also in court. So it has been reiterated throughout the case so far and in the court that yes, they were terminated because the game basically wasn't ready. It was too early. Termination notices of the founders gave one reason for their termination, and that was the supposed lack of readiness of Subnautica 2 for the release. Krafton reiterated that basis for its actions repeatedly. Okay, that's what the plaintiff is saying, those that are basically suing Krafton. Fortis called it a seismic shift in the case, a little bewildering, and also the judge, Lori Will, said the parties met for a ruling on the filed motion saying, well, that's something we definitely have to get to the bottom of today, because that is precisely what was cited as the reason in the answer. Krafton is focusing on the argument that the founders abandoned their posts and deceived their employer. Also that the founders downloaded files and kept devices with confidential information on them, and that only came to light after the termination, which, yes, that is true. Krafton's position is that this is justified their termination after the fact, and it filed a motion for forensically inspecting the founders' devices. The founders, meanwhile, contend that they had a right to those documents and devices and that the motion is too invasive, and to the latter point the judge agreed that is too invasive. Fortis also alleged that Krafton also wasn't playing ball, claiming that it needs emails and documents that relate to the earnout, basically that $250 million, which is what all of this is over in the first place. It's always over money, folks. It's over nothing else. But Krafton is always willing to provide data But Krafton is only willing to provide data from two people high up in the company rather than employees on the ground. So Krafton is not willing to supply the evidence during this phase of discovery that they're in to figure out exactly why they fired him and to prove it, right? Basically that the game wasn't ready. But Krafton is not willing to give those documents about the game to show that it wasn't ready, and that's why they fired him, right? Did say that another point of contention is what documents Krafton is willing to provide, specifically only where the word earnout intersects with the word termination. And the judge says that sounds like a really terrible email for someone to write, and it's hard for me to imagine that they'd be that blunt about it, right? And I would agree. Okay, you're not going to be that blunt. It's going to be very wordy. It's going to be very corporate. There's basically not going to be any documentation that's actually going to that Krafton is going to really be willing to provide over. So yes, Krafton is being pretty shifty, just like normal companies are, wanting to withhold as much as they can. Krafton is also arguing that the plaintiff requested too many custodians, people who possess relevant data, and that it would take too long. The judge also agreed to this, that the number is too high, but that the two parties would need to confer, something that Krafton had previously declined to do after it changed its argument. That's very frustrating, the judge says, which is Lori Will. The discussion of the motion ended with both parties agreeing to confer now, at least, and that the confirmation that the game's readiness was not the reason why the founders were terminated. Okay, now let's go over the original defendant's response, Krafton's response, to the initial allegation and complaint of those three being fired. Which the defendant, just to catch you guys up, the defendant said, oh, we were fired because they didn't want to pay the $250 million. Krafton is saying, no, it's because of something else. So we're going to go over that right now. Now, this is the, of course, defendant's answer to verified complaint. Okay, this is in, I can't even say that, of the state of Delaware. And this was filed electronically August 12th, basically 6 weeks ago, as I'm trying to talk. So this is at the very beginning of their answer. So let's see. Rather than investigating the effort necessary to meet the earn-out conditions, they freely negotiated, which are the three heads of Unknown Worlds Entertainment. They have instead resorted to litigation to demand a multi-million-dollar payday they haven't earned, which is that $250 million. Worse, they now ask the court to reinstate them on an expedited basis to roles and positions they had abandoned years before they ever filed the action. And they go into the next 7-8 pages talking about that, along with some other stuff too. Also on page 3, we're finding out that by July of 2023, Cleveland and McGuire's absence at Unknown Worlds had begun to impact the Subnautica 2 development team. The development director at Unknown Worlds told Gil that folks think Max and Charlie are checked out as studio heads and are confused as to why. In reality, Cleveland had abandoned video games to pursue filmmaking, a process he documented publicly on his website and social media. So again, there they are. They're saying that it's about being abandoned. And part of the reason that they're bringing up the abandonment is that, but as the end of the earn-out period drew near, the game was still nowhere near the planned scope. Instead, as of late of March of 2025, only 2 months before the key employees claimed that the game is ready for early release, the development lead for Subnautica 2 of Unknown Worlds noted that the first early release and second early release, which was planned for December of 2025, would only be about 12% of our intended 1.0 scope, and joked that, quote, at the rate, we would be in development for 30 years. So, yeah, there's definitely, it's stated, I think, pretty clearly that it wasn't that the fact that the game wasn't ready why they fired him. The game not being ready was a result. And Krafton is saying it's because they abandoned their job. I think that's pretty clearly stated right here in their answer, which again was August 12th. I think the plaintiffs are missing that, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I think the judge is missing that too. Again, I don't know the termination notices, but it would be pretty easy to coincide with, oh, because the game's not ready, or because, you know, they abandoned their role. But again, the result is the game not being ready, and that they're firing them because they didn't do their job. They didn't hold to the EPA and the agreements that they had for working for the company. Also, Krafton feared how an underbaked early access Subnautica 2 would be received by both existing fans and the broader market, and they urged Cleveland and McGuire to return to their post to generate a market-ready product that would not disappoint fans. Cleveland and McGuire declined. So yeah, why would you ask for them to come back if they're already there working on the project? Why would the game development director be like, yeah, they're not here. People are kind of confused that they're not able to take questions and stuff. And then Gil, the third out of the three, was basically doing all three jobs, which is kind of insane. We covered this in a previous video. Now, all of this, of course, this is the defendant's answer. All of this has to be proved, which is what the whole point of discovery is. And Krafton's kind of being a B word and not actually doing that and only wanting to basically release what makes them look good. Again, they can do that. This is how lawsuits are, and this is why they take so long, as people play hardball. But there's another problem. This is from Game Developer, and as you can see, we already did this in a previous video, but Unknown Worlds is suing its former leaders who have already sued Krafton. So we have a second lawsuit now for allegedly abandoning their fiduciary duties. There it is. And downloading and keeping confidential company information, which is what this lawsuit, again, they're asking, is already going over. Justified their termination after the fact and filed a motion to forensically inspect the founders' devices. The founders, meanwhile, contend that they had a right to those documents and devices. Well, let's look. This is the original. What page is this? 52? We go all the way motherfreaking back up here. Okay, this is the original. This is Unknown Worlds Entertainment versus Cleveland, McGuire, and Gill. This is the original document. This was literally published 3 days later after the response from Krafton to the other lawsuit that the three, Cleveland, McGuire, and Gill, filed against Krafton. Okay, are we keeping track of everything? Because, yeah, this is getting kind of dicey. I agree. This is getting kind of nuts. Okay, so this is a log really big, long, like, there's a lot of repeats catching up. Yeah, let's go back to page 52 here. Okay, preliminary forensics review indicates that those 72,000 files included ream of sensitive, proprietary, and confidential information, including game design files and Subnautica concepts. When we get to the bottom, Unknown Worlds had to act fast to prevent the confidential information from falling into the wrong hands. On July 17th, immediately upon learning key employees' data theft, Unknown Worlds sent a cease and desist letter to the key employees demanding that they cease all conduct in violation of their confidentiality obligations. Unknown Worlds further demand that the key employees return all confidential information and company property in their possession, custody, or control, and return all devices containing confidential information for forensic examination. So we're crossing crap now. And yeah, there's no way. Okay, if you can deny it for this one, the judge is agreeing, yeah, we don't need to get into their stuff. Let's focus on why they were terminated and their lawsuit. But they're not going to be able to avoid it with this. It's a whole nother lawsuit. Now, the thing that's interesting is that, again, it's been 6 weeks, and Cleveland, McGuire, and Gill have not responded to this lawsuit. And now, those three also have to respond to this. And they have to confer on basically, where we're going to get information from and how the court case is going to proceed. I feel like right now, this one's actually on hold with Unknown Worlds. And some channels out there, they've been saying, oh, it's Unknown Worlds and the three founders versus Krafton. No, that is not what's going on. They don't even know this lawsuit exists. Now, regardless of where exactly the truth is, I do believe it's in the middle, but I think it's very possible that the three creators, the three founders, right, basically they were excited with the money they already got, and they weren't as focused about that anymore, and they were living a life they've never lived before because of all of the money that they had. And I think, too, also Krafton does not want to pay the $250 million. But I think, too, there's some information there that, yeah, there was also some kind of hanky-panky stuff with the three founders with what they were doing, lack of input for their roles, and also taking confidential information and keeping it that they shouldn't have now that they're terminated. You don't get to keep your stuff. There's also allegations in here, too, that they were willing to basically self-publish Subnautica 2. And guess what? They can't freaking do that because it's not their IP. It's Krafton. Krafton paid $500 million for it. Now, usually I'm not the one to help back up, Krafton or some other publisher or big company versus three dudes. But I can also see from Unknown Worlds and also from Krafton that it's like, yeah, they didn't necessarily do everything they should have done. And the whole thing is that I ultimately blame the 3 for selling in the first place. If they really were wanting to focus on the game, if they were really wanting to focus on their fans, they never would have sold their IP. They would have kept it. Krafton wouldn't even be involved. But I think the reason it is because Below Zero didn't sell enough. And so they needed money from somewhere else. And Krafton was like, yeah, we'll buy it. And Krafton just got done buying, basically, Hi-Fi Rush from Xbox and Tango Gameworks. And they're like, hey, that's another good IP. That one's actually really well liked, score really high. Let's make some more Subnautica games. So where exactly the truth is, I don't know. Again, I don't have access to all of the information, and no other channel does either. Let me just spread that out there. But I gotta say that this is a mess, but we do have some good news. Krafton and Unknown Worlds is committing to getting the game out for early access in 2026. I think that's great. I'm going to be looking forward to it, and I'm going to be showing it here on the channel. But yeah, I think the thing that sucks is that Krafton is making it hard in the lawsuit, but again, they don't have to damn themselves. They're the defendant, for Pete's sakes. And of course, the plaintiffs, they don't have to damn themselves either. But right now, with where we're waiting, the 3 studio heads that were fired, they have to respond to this with Krafton, and they have to respond to this with Unknown Worlds. So that's what we're waiting on. So when we actually have something to talk about, I'll make another video. And with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. You can always follow me at GamingGarbage22 if you like the content. Maybe not necessarily my point of view, but if you like the content, go ahead and like, sub, all that jazz, and also share the content too. That really helps me. And if you like this kind of news type of stuff, hey, there's a whole nother playlist on my channel that is just gaming news consolidated, and it's all literally right there for you. You can just hit the play button and go. There's also other stuff we do on the channel as well. There's playthroughs and there's deep dives in the industry, and if you're interested in looking at those are also all in playlists, so you can see what's available there. Also, too, if you'd like, you can follow me over at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. And yeah, when I'm playing video games and doing my playthroughs, I'll definitely chat with you guys. Also, too, if you want to see everything there first unedited, you can go ahead and go there. It'll be there basically for 7 days. And when it's after that, it'll just be ripped off the platform and disappear forever. So, except for what I got on my hard drives, which is basically everything. So yeah, this is a mess. I don't like it, okay? But I definitely think both are at fault here. I think both are at fault. Both the 3 and the publisher, because Krafton has screwed over some other publishers before. But also, Krafton can't spend $500 million and have stuff wrecked, just like they did with Kerbal Space Program 2, because that's a dead IP now. That's completely done. So and they're not going to have another one, especially one that cost them a heck of a lot more money. And does Krafton want to pay the $250 million? No. Of course not. But I think they kind of have a basis of why they don't want to pay that and why they don't have to pay that and why they fired him. But with this whole thing, saying that it was because it wasn't ready, either that's actually what Krafton said, and it shouldn't have been said that way, because it's actually pretty clear in their defense of why, which abandonment, right? Or they are actually changing it on the fly, which again doesn't make a lot of sense because it's already been laid out in August 12th of this year that, hey, it's because they abandoned their job, which resulted in the undercooked game. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. With that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.